Okay, guys, it's Kelly from Feather Connections, and this is our first thing. We're going to invite people that add value to the community and talk about different topics. So today we have the
So that's
Dinosaur
going to be like a
Omelette,
weird
Angela and
cutout.
Christopher
Like,
No, it's
Westra,
fine.
nice.
and
I know what I
we're
was
going to talk
talking about. All
about
right.
defining your identity in a niche market because quail is already really niche, but how can you kind of separate yourself from that? So why don't you guys tell us a little bit about yourself first, and then we'll dive into the topic.
Cool, thanks. Yeah. Well, like you said, I'm Christopher, this is Angela, and what do we do here, hon?
So
Oh, we're married people, by the way.
yes. So we encourage others to become more self-sufficient, learn skills, improve your quality of life, do things with the family, be outside, grow your food, your meat, your eggs, your vegetables.
Pretty much what everybody out there is probably doing.
Yeah, we're big on education and just sharing knowledge and information. And yeah, we live what we talk about. We have a small homestead and have jumbo quail and different types of animals. And then he turns into Farmer Joe and has a garden yearly.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, the philosophy and like the core philosophy kind of guides everything we do here. Homestead, hatchery, we raise quail. We're in the quail community as well as a few other animals. And yeah, I think education's huge. Like we do a weekly live strictly for Q&A education. I like to do academic subjects. And that's my big thing, education and optimization, like becoming better, more knowledgeable, learning things. So
I love your guys' channel too. I think it's like so organized. Like I love that. You know exactly, like it is a Q&A, but you know exactly what to like ask questions about because it's like this is what we're talking about this week.
It's funny, whenever I hear that, and somebody says that compliment, I'm like, I really want to go back to my first grade teacher and let her know. They had no faith in us.
I'm like so disorganized, like I'm all over the place. So it's nice to have everyone else be organized and then I have something to model after and strive to.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's jump into the topic of defining your identity in a niche market.
Right on. You want me to start?
I was going to say, do you want to start? I know you have notes and I have notes and there's lots of good information.
Yeah, well, yeah, I want to discuss the importance of being authentic and branding in your niche market and what a niche market is. So, and the reason we're doing this, Kelly and I talked about this before we did our this interview questionnaire. A lot of people who are raising quail or doing homestead are wondering how to profit off of it, and they may not have a strong business background. It may be very intimidating, and it should be. If you've never done it before, it's a new skill set, so it's intimidating. And whenever you're going into a new skill or something you're not familiar with, it's like jumping into the ocean and you don't know where to grab, and it's a disorganized. It can be a very disorganized attempt if you're not starting out properly and coming up with a formula and goals and etc. A timeline and an outline of what you're trying to do and a progression of action. Mm-hmm. So what the niche market is, I'm not French. I don't like that word too much, but I'll say the niche market. So the niche market is your specific market, not a general market. Like if I sell tires, I'm a tire salesman, but the niche market I may hit is racing tires. Mm-hmm. So there's an overall structure, and then there's a substructure, and then there can be even a substructure under that. Like I sell racing tires for drag strips. Mm-hmm. That's just, I like using metaphor because it's easy to understand. So that's like your niche. So yeah, there's all kinds of quail or all kinds of homestead birds. But if we're going to be talking about quail, yeah, you can definitely find a niche market for that. But then, what is your defining that and defining self in that market so you can identify yourself independent of your competition, which there's a lot. We're not selling radiological equipment where there'd be a few competitors. You're selling something that's generally accessible and easy to do, but it requires a skill set to be applied, I think, in another area, which is your messaging, product development, and communication to your potential customers. I talk a lot, so if I give you too much at once, just stop me because I ramble. And I hope it all makes sense.
No, it does. It's good. I like the analogy of the tires. I think that helps with like narrowing it down.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's like you have a general arching structure, and then there's substructure underneath.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a systems guy. I like looking at things as systems.
Yeah. No, that I think that's a good way to like understand it too. Because I think a lot of times people hear niche, but then they're like, what does that specifically mean? I think that's like a good way to kind of
It's niche market.
I didn't even know that was a French word, so I learned something new.
Yeah.
So we kind of talked, one of the things I had like highlighted from your notes was emphasizing the pitfalls of imitation.
Yeah.
And I've kind of noticed that a lot. I think when you're in a niche market, you see other people that are successful and you try to model how they've done it. And
Right,
I
of course.
think if you're modeling too much after somebody else, like it's nice to have goals and like, okay, I want to go there and like a trajectory of where you're going. But I think if you model someone too closely, then you don't enjoy it because it's not your, like you're not being authentic, you're not being yourself, you're doing what someone else did that makes them happy, and then you're not as happy. And I've seen a lot of people do that with like even locally here in Utah, people have tried to like imitate what I do, and they don't see, like they'll have initial success, but they never stay with it long term. And I think it's because they're not doing it in a way that makes them happy and like adds value to their life.
You brought up a very good
Yeah.
point, and I was thinking about this. I was going to bring into my class. You don't have to be the best. You need only be consistent. Your consistency will prevail over technical proficiency every single time. Because the technically proficient, if they're not consistent with it, like they know what they're doing, but they kind of half behind it, they don't do it well, then it falters and it's not going to be a quality product. Whereas your consistency is, especially in this context, like in small business or in a business or in a communication context, your consistency is exceptionally important because as soon as you get off of YouTube, as soon as you stop, people forget you. Like you could have 1 million followers who go on your social media. As soon as you shut down, they forget you, like you never even existed. You may have a handful of people going, what happened to, but done. And that's perfectly fine. It's like we don't think about, where did I buy shoes from? That shoe company that puts millions of dollars in advertising. We don't think about them. We just buy our shoes and go about our business. So the communication is quite important and being consistent with it.
And with what you were saying, Kelly, with your opening statement, with people mimicking and copying closely, and you mentioned that's not a bad thing to get some structure and bones to what you're trying to do, especially if you're new and you're just kind of like figuring things out. It is beneficial to get structure and like some sort of idea from other people.
Yeah.
And then like you mentioned, these people you noticed, they're not making it personal to themselves. So then it's kind of like they're losing that fire, that passion. But the passion really maybe wasn't there to begin with. Maybe it was excitement that was pressing them forward. And within each person, whether you're aware of it or not, we all have creativity and we're all unique. And when you're able to try and focus on your own, what makes you you, and your unique specific perspective, and you can tie that into whatever you're pursuing, your branding, that's going to set you apart. And like you pointed out, that's going to give that passion and drive and give you something that's going to be more motivating and personal to you, I guess, rather than losing focus. But there's more to it than that. But that is a driving factor with having that personalized.
Absolutely. What were you going to say?
Oh, I was just going to say, and I think there's something to be said about still, like, obviously having structuring after someone else and kind of just doing one foot in front of the other. Because I think a lot of times when someone's like if someone flat out was like, what's your niche? I would be like, probably rattle off several things before I'd be like, is that it? Like, you know, and I think it's hard to look at yourself and be like, what sets me apart? But someone else might be like, oh, I think it's this. So I think kind of taking one step in front of the other. Like when I started doing farmers markets, I just had eggs on a table and
Yeah,
there
for
was
sure.
like literally nothing there. And
Mhm.
then when people started talking to me and asking me questions, then I was like, oh, I get this question a lot. Maybe I'll make like a cute sign. And so then the next time I had like a cute sign and some eggs. And
A
then it kind
progressive,
of
you know.
developed into like more of like an education. Eggs are just like people do buy eggs, but like mainly we do education. And so when people see the cute little eggs, then they have a lot of questions. And so I mainly just talk to people the whole time and like educate them and encourage them to be more self-sufficient. But I
Yeah.
didn't know that until I kind of like put myself out there. And I think just people get like FOMO, like fear of missing
Yes.
out. And so if
Yeah,
you're like
that's
so freaking excited to tell everybody about quail or whatever it is, like they get excited. Like they're like, I don't even know what a quail looks like, but I need one now. Like I have so many people like in the city are like, I don't even know what it is, but I need it. Like
Mhm.
so I don't know.
Mhm.
That was a random segue, but
No,
yeah,
that's great. And
I
it's
think
true.
that
It's
developing
FOMO.
that passion and then kind of I don't know, finding out what makes you happy within that
Right,
kind of
yeah.
helps.
I would
Expand
like to what we were talking about. I don't want people to lose sight of this. The whole point of what we're doing is not imitating
Mhm.
other businesses. It is intuitive. Like naturally, you see a successful company, and our intuition tells us if I do what they do, I'll be doing well too, because they're doing well. But what they,
Mhm.
of course, don't see is the 10, 20, or 30 years of failure, trial and error, change, and consistency
Mhm.
and adaptation that occurred as well. But we want to imitate things we see that are successful, and that's like you were saying, it's foreign to us. It's not who we are. So it's work. It's like it becomes intellectually challenging. It uses more of your headspace trying to translate something else into the self and then communicate that to others. If that
Mhm.
makes sense, you're taking this external thing, translating it through your filter, through self, and then trying to tell it to somebody else rather than directly, this is who I am,
Mhm.
and I'll represent myself in my business. And there's things, there's things you should and shouldn't do, obviously. That's more nuanced. But I think that's a very, very important factor is not trying to imitate, which you do see often. You become inauthentic. People don't recognize you. You don't recognize yourself. It doesn't have as
Mhm.
deep a meaning to you. I mean,
Yeah.
I broke one of the number one rules in logos. I broke all the rules when we made our logo. It's not simple. It's got an illustration. It shouldn't. But I was like, whatever.
Because I envisioned it and then I was like, can you draw this? Like, well, I did a sketch and I was like, can you make this better? And then he did it, and he hated it for a little while, but everybody seemed to love it.
Now I nearly dislike it.
I love it. I think it's super like recognizable and it's unique and
Yeah, that's the
yeah,
thing I want to say. You
and it's
guys
so
out
cute.
there, like one of the things I'm an illustrator. Like I have illustration and background in that, and I like drawing, and I like kids, and I like doing happy stuff. So I took those things that I do, and I incorporated into a lot of the things we do here with like our packaging material or education material, which our customers are responsive to. The people we deal with, they're like, oh, I really like this. It was easy to read. It's happy. It's not saying, hey, I'm doing anything better than anybody else, but I took the particular attribute I have and tried to use it here, and was
Mhm.
consistent with it, just simply consistent.
And the happy characters that he produces, the cartoon characters and stuff, it really does represent like his fun, childish, like comical nature. So
And it comes in very handy because I made these 2-scale quails so people can see how big a quail actually is. Because I hated bringing
I
in
love
live
that. You need to
Yes.
sell those.
This is how big a quail is in real life. They're not really. So I make this thing anyway.
yeah.
Yeah, use your gifts. Use the things you like, and you're going to develop your own voice and your own identity, which is going to be unique,
Mm-hmm.
and then be consistent with it, and people start remembering you. You get online and you see these stupid videos, but you keep seeing the same goofy guy doing the same goofy stuff.
Mhm.
No value to it whatsoever, but you recognize it and you know this person just because you see it over and over again.
Yeah.
Let's talk about like discovering your unique voice.
Right? That's important. That's
Mhm.
difficult.
Yeah.
This is like, Kelly, all this stuff we're talking about is fundamental to operating whatever your business is. I mean, these are lateral um, bits of knowledge. They don't just apply like with their homes. It goes into any kind of business. You know, it's very fundamental stuff. But that's the thing. People watching this, some of them don't really have any of the fundamentals down. Like they're just kind of winging it and trying to pick up information, and there's no structure, which is important, and that's a skill. Anyway, tangent. I was just talking to you, but yeah, whatever you want to do, go ahead.
Unique voice discovering.
Or I'm like looking at the notes that I wrote on here.
All right, we're going to talk about discovering your unique voice. All right, who we are, and this is independent of all the other businesses or independent of everything outside of the self. These are very, nobody likes to discuss this. These are deeper philosophical things that we engage in to actually come to these self-discoveries before we even start launching stuff, because you don't want to be miserable doing something you don't like.
Mm-hmm.
So when my kids were very little, I taught them this skill set, and they were toddlers. I said, you know, independent of me, you're worthy of love. Independent of anyone else, you have value and meaning and purpose. Independent of anybody else, you have, you know, a meaning and there's a function for you here. None of that external stuff gives that. The trick and the fun part of being alive is discovering what those things are, what your meaning and purpose are, because it's unique to you. And so we go into this self-discovery. So what are your core values to discover about yourself, to define your, you know, your underlying business philosophy? These core philosophies, these things that define you, they're not going to appeal to everybody. That's the fun part. We get, again, intuition says we want everybody to like us. If you want everybody to like you, nobody will, because you're trying to please everyone and it's nothing specific. So you need to
Oh,
be
I
relatable.
love that.
Oh, that's true.
No, that is true.
So you can't do that. So you need to define through who you are and your business as you model it. Then you're going to start understanding who your audience is, who you're marketing to, who you're selling to, and who you're communicating with. Because now it's easier to tailor a message. I know who I'm talking to now because I'm talking to somebody who likes what I represent.
Mm-hmm.
So now I can formulate my message to these people because I know what I want to hear. And I know that they want to hear the same thing or similar to it, only a little more developed, whatever it is you're doing in your messaging.
But don't you find that like so much easier when your customers come, like as you've developed your brand and like your unique voice, that like you've attracted people that are like essentially similar to you and like want to hear what you have to teach them.
Oh my God,
And it's just like, I honestly, like when I go to any market, like I'm not worried about being myself or standing out. I always do, because like no one knows what Coturnix quail are or anything. But like I know what kind of people are going to come up and who's going to ask questions, and it just, I think it validates you even more because they like who you are already. And like you said, you don't need that external validation, but it is nice that like they're riding your same weird wavelength, and it just it kind of adds to that passion. Like, I'm excited to share about this, and you're excited to hear about this, and now I'm even more excited. Like,
it's hard though too when you're starting up. You get a lot of pushback even from people you expect support from. They're going to be like, "Oh, that's a stupid idea." And that's
because they don't share the same values or perspective or goals. But yeah, I know what you mean, Kelly, because often when after I meet with customers or I'm talking with people, I'll come home and then tell Christopher about it, and I said, "Oh, it's so much fun," because they value what I value. They are enjoying what I'm sharing. They're asking questions that is interesting to me and interesting to them, and I'm seeing them get just like excited and alive with what the topic is and able to be myself, just like what you're saying, and then you're being true to yourself. You're not being fake. You're being authentic. You're being unique. But
yeah. Well, and in this market, the homestead market, these aren't like lazy people. They're self-starters. Oh, that's what I like about the homestead, the quail, the farmer people. They are self-directed. They are independent in thought. You know, they have resolve. They really don't let the external dictate too much their internal. Like they're not going to let some external thing they see on the internet kind of determine whether or not they're going to pursue that interest.
Well, and you guys probably have more of, I don't want to say like real homesteaders, but essentially you have people with the space to expand their homestead in the way they would like, and probably, depending on where they're at, less regulations. Whereas
Mhm.
like my area is city people with like a dream to do that and trying to learn the skills they can in their very, very small Utah space until they can like pursue, hopefully when the prices go down, like, you know, a
Yeah.
bigger plot, and then have skills of like minimal skills like chickens and quail and think like sourdough gardening, things like that, that they can expand on.
You actually brought up a really good point for your niche market, which is a really good
Right.
one, because now you have a conglomerate of people centralized, a population living in a centralized location, a city limit area, so for example, and they have a desire to produce food but don't have the land to do so at the scale they want. So that brings a really good opportunity to educate them that you don't need to have scale to produce food. You already have a very defined market, like a very defined niche market, who you can directly communicate to and who share the same passion, which is, you know, what you're doing. So that's actually a huge benefit. Finding a niche market and finding, which I guess we'll move into talking about that, finding who you're communicating to can be very difficult, like defining that person or that group of people.
Did you want to say a little bit more like specifics in discovering your particular voice? I was just thinking for people who are, you know, they're just like either they're brand new to what they're doing and they're trying to figure out what they're doing, or maybe they're already doing something but they've lost sight of what it is their focus is. So the whole, you know, sometimes it just comes down to like practical exercises of pen and paper or computer and typing, and you got to pick your own brain, and just ask yourself serious questions that are simple questions but can be challenging sometimes to answer. But like, what is important to you? What is your focus? What is your specific interests? Whether it's, you know, animals, products, whatever. And also talk with yourself, discuss what you're not interested in, what you don't want to compromise on. Like, you need to draw some hard lines so then it'll help you stay on track with your goal. Because sometimes we'll have like a few customers who might be difficult, and then they'll challenge your line and then push you over your line, and you didn't establish, you know, what you're not willing to do or whatever, and then it really rubs you the wrong way, and it can be super discouraging. So it's really good to establish what your goals are, what is specifically important to you. Then that can keep you on track, and then say no to those few people that are trying to push you over that edge, and then you feel good about that decision and continue, you know, encouraged and moving forward. So I don't know if you guys wanted to mention any other specifics.
No, I think that's a really good point. I actually, probably about 3 years ago, started doing the hatching rental programs.
Yeah.
And I actually stopped for probably like 18 months, 2 years, because I had so many, not so many, but enough people pushing back and kind of crossing that boundary, and just made it so like such a not pleasant experience that I just stopped doing it, because I was like, you know what, it's good money, but if I don't enjoy it, they can tell I don't enjoy it, and then they're not going to have as good of an experience either. And so I just kind of stopped doing it for like 18 months and kind of focused on what makes me happy. And like, our brand is like city limit self-sufficiency. So it's whatever we can do in the city to like cover feed costs, and then maybe a little bit extra because I'm a stay-at-home mom. So I have the extra, sort of kind of have the extra time to do it. So we do like small, like we do jewelry and like oddity stuff and falconry, slightly. That's one of the lines where it's like we only have like one or two, and then the rest they're kind of we've started to expand into teaching the falconers how to raise their own birds, because there's so many in this area that anybody that raises quail can't possibly sustain that.
Wow.
So like building hutches and selling them breeding things, and then offering to hatch the eggs and sell them back chicks and stuff
Mhm.
is something that I've kind of gone into, is teaching the falconers how to be self-sufficient for their particular animal that they're trying to feed, because they can only
And
fly on certain times a year.
And that's problem solving on your
Mhm.
account. You know, you found something that you're dabbled into, but realize it's not quite where you want to put too much of your energy in, and then you problem solve with a creative solution, and then that's a new growth, potential growth avenue for you. And again, with the goal setting and planning, setting your short-term goals and long-term goals are important with your being able to keep your vision steady. And then because it's not difficult in any endeavor in life to become overwhelmed or feel like, just there's not a lot of time, because everybody has lives and all sorts of things pulling their attention. So it's very important to be able to be reminded of, why am I doing this? What am I trying to accomplish? I like these new possibilities that are popping up. Let me take notes and figure out where that fits in, or if it fits in, or how can we be creative about it to make it doable. But yeah.
And I think one of those questions I constantly ask myself, which I guess could be a good thing or a bad thing, is because it's not our main source of income. So I'm frequently asking myself, what brings me joy, and kind of focus in on that.
Yeah. I think that's the case for most people doing these kind of endeavors. It's not their primary income. It's a hobby, but they do want to make some money off of it. Maybe like the same situation, they're married, or it's a weekend thing. And there's no reason why they can't. And there's no reason why they can't treat it like, if your kids open up a lemonade stand, you take the time to treat it like an actual business, so they can feel like they're running a real business. You do the whole thing of like, here's how you talk to customers, all this stuff. Well, for some reason, maybe people don't think we're the same way for themselves. Like with this subject matter, a lot of people don't want to do this. I'm not going to say they're intimidated, but it's an area to which they don't have high proficiency because they've not practiced it. Like, like never riding a bicycle, you're not good at it, so you ride it a few times. The same thing. But this is kind of, it's a new mountain of data to employ and understand and learn. And it becomes a little intimidating. But logically, if I'm spending hundreds of hours with my animals and building fences, it would make sense to maybe put in a dozen hours or 6 hours or 3 hours into learning how to communicate what I'm doing to the people I'm trying to reach. A fraction of the time and none of the physical effort. It's just brain work. And I mean, that's tough. Intellectual work burns you out quickly. I was reading that 80% of the corporate workday is a waste of time, and only the first, it's true, and only it's the 80-20. Yeah, and only the first hour or two is productive, like thinking labor, where people are thinking, and then they burn out. We're biologically designed that way. We're not designed to think all day. We're designed to not get eaten and go find food. So we put that in a corporate setting. We're not going to be thinking all day. It's the same thing here. Like you get burned out quick thinking, but investing the time, you're definitely going to see the reward. So, which leads us into this unique selling position.
Yeah, I was going to say, you made a really good point about that case study.
Oh, right.
In the notes that you talked about.
Yeah,
and how they became niche.
Right. I love this company, the Dr. Squatch Soap Company. So let's start from scratch and pretend they don't exist. I make one of those organic lumps of soap. Well, how do you think of that? You think of it like the way you think of every other stupid little organic soap. Little, what do you call it? The natural cotton fiber yarn wrapped around it, 100% handcrafted, very earthy. So they didn't do this, which was wise, or at least they changed their marketing strategy in 2020, which was also beneficial. So they started in 2013. They make personal care products for men. Most people are probably familiar. Dr. Squatch, they've advertised. They put a lot of money in advertising. That's why you know them. They make soaps, body washes, etc. But what they did, which was brilliant, and they hired an independent advertising marketing agency to develop this idea for them, but it was really brilliant, is that they did their humorous advertising, their very offbeat, borderline offensive humor. Like some people would be offended to it, which goes back to the don't try to please everybody, because you're not going to please anybody.
Right.
But they pleased their target market, which was this, 18 to 30 or 40-year-old male.
Mm-hmm.
And it was humorous. It wasn't taking itself seriously, and it was silly, basically. But their aggressive strategy, what did they do? They achieved a 400% year-over-year sales growth, reaching more than $100 million in revenue by 2020. The other thing that they had going for them in 2020, which we may forget, is everybody was sitting on their computers because of the COVID.
Yeah.
So it was easy to reach an audience then on a video. And I'm sure they knew that, and they leveraged that pretty sufficiently. So they put 3.6 million in advertisements on TikTok, etc. And with that generated a 10 to 15% new customers, generating that $100 million growth. I mean, it's really amazing. But the whole point of that is they were goofy. They weren't imitating other earthy soaps. We use only the purest ingredients made from all organic goat crap, etc. No. They were funny. They were funny, and they were memorable.
Right.
And then people started buying their product. And
Hey,
then,
that's a memorable.
yeah.
Yeah.
When you're
And then you
yourself,
have the-
people remember that. Your vibe attracts your tribe.
Right.
Right. And the great thing, that product, it's not, it's a perishable product. It's used briefly and has to be replaced. So then you have this self-reinforcing customer base. They use it, they buy it, they tell people, etc. So it was a really interesting case. And the whole point of that is they took a chance, acted goofy, and it was very successful. Because now, in the year 2025, we're inundated with information, messaging, signaling, nonstop. Our dopamine receptors are wearing out, and we're constantly looking for more stimulation. And so it's very hard to be memorable. So then you have to really think strategically now. I can't just do advertising or try to be silly or make a viral video or something to reach my audience. That helps. But they're going to forget as soon as they turn their telephone off. The communication needs to, and this is my opinion at this point, I think the communication needs to be deeper, like on a human level, to where it's more emotionally binding. And it could be humorous, it could be like pulling on the heartstrings, whatever you mean, but it needs to be a deeper form of communication, because truly what's happened over the last decade or so is the abandonment of humanity through this distanced relationships we all have on the internet and stuff. And so we inherently, because of tribalism in our biology, we seek that. And and I tell people all the time, because I'm genuine. I really don't care if somebody likes me, dislikes me. My objective is for the human being to live a better quality of life, and nobody's going to do that for them. They have to use the gifts and tools that they have inherent and explore them and develop them, and they can live better. And this stuff, this how to do a business, it's just an extension of these very basic things. Because these are all, when I say this all the time, everything is a system. And the system is organized by many substructures, and it's built by many other subsystems. But you want them all functioning well, and you really need to look at the foundation of all of these different things you're doing. And with this stuff, this marketing, understanding self and communicating yourself in a unique way is very important, because you're building not just a brand or name. It's very important. You're building relationships. This is always the key. You're building relationships with
And
people.
trust.
You may not know them personally, but they relate to you in a way. Like you're a single mom. So you're a stay-at-home mom. So how many stay-at-home moms are there that can relate to what you're doing, trying to raise?
A lot in Utah.
Right. That's
Most of them.
So developing a unique definition of self can be challenging, but it's already written in you. It's written in your DNA. You have 3 billion lines of code writing your story, and you know your story. So learning how to tell it is the challenge. Communication is very challenging. You know?
So we didn't talk about this, but I was just thinking about this question. If somebody's like watching this, like I do, and like take notes, if there was like 3 things that you were like, okay, write this down on your piece of paper, or this is like what we want you to remember, like on how to find your niche, like right now and start working on it, what would you tell them to like write down?
Oh man, I like think fast on your feet questions. Yeah, she didn't prep me with this one. This is
Ready to
just
go.
all right, 3 things that I would tell somebody to find their niche.
Yeah.
What is unique about you? What is the strength you have? Like, what is the thing? And they don't know. People don't know because they don't really think about this.
I think if you just start writing things about yourself, it helps, because I think until you start writing pen to paper, like you may not know. And then you might just see one thing and go, oh, hey, that's the direction I want to go.
Right. I wouldn't think of it as like, let's develop a product.
Mm-hmm.
Don't develop a product. Define yourself. The more you understand self-awareness, like if you understand the concept of self-awareness, definition of self, you feel confident in yourself. There's a difference between somebody who's submissive and assertive, and this understanding of self, to where I understand I am independent of everything else. This is true. You're independent of all these external things. We get lied to about that. We believe that who we are is dependent on external. So I would take the time to understand self, because it'll help you in every decision you make, building up your product or brand going forward. And when you're confident in self, you're going to be confident in what you're doing, and you'll be confident in your failures. It won't be detrimental to you.
Okay, so that's number 1.
That was a big one.
Mm-hmm.
So, ready to go.
Do you want to say something, dear wife?
So closely related, but not the same, is identifying what is your big goal? Like, what is your vision? Write down your vision, and then work backwards from there. And you're going to, let's say you want to accomplish whatever, business 5 years from now. So then let's work back, each year back, and then to the 6 month, 3 month, 1 month goals. And you're going to you may not know exactly what is going to happen, because you don't know the future, but you need to write some expectations down so you have something to drive yourself forward to. So once you write down your goals, then as you're moving forward to achieve these goals, you're going to want to collect data in a way where, whether you're writing it down or just, compiling it in your mind, so that as you're moving forward, you're tweaking things. You're going to be adjusting your perspective, understanding of how things actually work. Maybe you didn't know a certain animal, takes this long to grow, or, some things take longer than expected, or you didn't expect certain difficulties then that you have to problem solve and work your way through. So as you're moving forward toward these goals, you're going to make adjustments, and not to be discouraged. Failure is part of being alive, and that is how you learn and grow. It's how you grow. So don't be afraid of failure or when things go wrong. Just stay focused on your goals and move forward and adjust them as you move, and then you'll realize whether or not they're realistic or not. If you realize, oh, this is not a realistic goal to meet in 3 months, then make adjustments. Don't be discouraged, like, oh, I can't believe I'm like way off. It's going to take 7 months instead of 3 months. It's okay. Just make adjustments so then you can stay moving forward, but in a realistic way.
Kelly, I know you're talking, and I have a good point. My battery's dying. Let me grab a plug.
You what? Oh, you forgot the plug?
Yeah, I'll be right back.
He's getting his charger.
Oh, I was like, you have a plug? Oh, no.
So that was number 2. Yeah. So I find a lot of times people don't articulate goals, or they'll write them down, but then they don't revisit them. It's something that has to be kept in your, he's plugging it in, kept in your line of sight in some way. but because life happens, there's a lot of things that happens in life that can really throw you off.
Sorry.
Oh,
Is there anything on here that we didn't that you want to like circle back to?
Yeah, I want to give you one last thing. You want to?
Oh yeah, we need to do number 3 too, but like after that, if there's something you want to circle back to.
We can talk about targeting the audience. The last thing I want to say about like developing your niche, and none of this sounds like, well, that's not niche development, that's personal development. And that's precisely correct. Because you need to learn these skills. Or, I don't like saying you need to do anything. It is advisable to learn these skills first before proceeding forward. The last thing I was going to say is what I find extremely beneficial is trying to have a dual purpose for anything I'm trying to accomplish. And I'll give you an example. We do a lot of these YouTube live videos, and it seems like, well, why are you doing them? Oh, just to do YouTube, or just to do no. It holds me accountable to do something every week, whether I want to or not. I still have to go up there and do it. I learn something new, because if I don't know it, or maybe I generally know it, I'm still doing an in-depth re-education, so I'm gaining a new skill, and it helps me communicate, like I'm learning how to teach a little better each time. And a lot of this is teaching, because we've got to deal with all different people who are, some are way here and some are way up here with their knowledge. So it helps me learn how to communicate there. So I like to use, when I'm doing something, the goal isn't just one thing, or maybe it is. I have a primary goal, but hopefully there's other things happening because of it. Like, oh, I got to do this task. Oh yeah, but now you're learning how to organize yourself better. Now you're learning how to really properly outline and structure stuff. Like I'm total ADHD brain, totally disorganized. I always tell people I was a straight F student in school, like I was a total failure. And I thought I was a dumb kid. I never had the skills on how to do much. And then you learn them and you're like, oh, okay. That's why I tell people you can accomplish.
That blows my mind because you're like seriously one of the smartest people, like most intellectual people I've ever met.
I like knowledge. I like to teach.
The enjoyment of learning.
Yeah,
that's.
I encourage learning, not because you want to be an academic nerd, but you enjoy life more because you understand things in a deeper way. The deeper you understand something, the more you appreciate it, and then it becomes a deeper experience for you. And we're contextual, experiential creatures. We humans, we need to have experience to put them into our worldview and to have value to them. So when we learn them, we learn and experience them in a deeper way. And it's very rewarding. You tell us to a regular dude who's sipping a beer, I don't need that bull crap. Let's go out and do it. I was like, yeah, you can go out and do it. And I know it sounds kind of goofy, but if you learn about it and dedicate time to understand it, you'll value it much more. And I know you seek peace. And I know this will bring you great peace and satisfaction.
And another thing I would add too is that fear is something that holds a lot of people back in anything. And with what Christopher was just explaining, learning and pursuing deeper knowledge on things, when we have greater understanding, that brings more peace. That gets rid of some fear, because a lot of times fear is just the unknown. You just don't know, you're not experienced, or you've never done it. You've never, spoken in front of somebody or whatever it is. So him, saying that example of the discipline of doing our live videos every week and then learning something new and then learning how to speak with people, it's that greater understanding of whatever the topic will bring more peace and push that fear out. And then you gain confidence, which is what Christopher was talking about earlier. So, fear is a very real thing, and fear, can be life-saving, but don't let it paralyze you. Seek understanding. Think about what it is that you're scared of, and then identify it, and then learn about what that is and challenge yourself. And
well, you know what they say, the old saying, the courageous man isn't the man who has no fears, the man who still goes in and does it, even though he has the fear. He faces the fear. So, face the fear. All right. Oh, the other thing you were talking about, Kelly. So you said targeting the proper audience.
Oh, yeah.
So this is a technical, well, semi-technical. Ladies and gentlemen at home, there's marketing and there's advertising. There is a difference between the two. Marketing is more of like defining your target. Advertising is delivering the message, like the thing up on screen, the radio ad. Do they still have radios? The radio ads, the TV thing. That's when you formalize your message and you send it out to those people you've defined. So the market is the product you have and how you're presenting it to whoever's receiving it. Let's say I'm a potato farmer. Okay, my market, I'm going to think of two different markets. My first market is going to be French fry makers. So I'm going to develop my potatoes and position my potatoes to the potato French fry makers. But wait a minute, there's this science class that makes potato-powered clocks. I'm going to sell my potatoes. My market is going to be potato-powered clock kids. So I have these two different markets. And now I'm going to develop advertising for each. So I'll have a picture of potato-powered clock over here. And then I'll have a picture of French fries over here for advertising to these two different groups. So my marketing is defining who I'm selling to. That's a fun challenge because that goes back to who you are, your business, your product, and what your unique value is, what problem you're solving. What problem does your product or service solve? Okay, if it didn't, it wouldn't have any value. Okay, it has to solve some kind of value problem, like I want to have eggs, or I want to do something with my kids, or I'm trying to learn something, whatever it is in that context. And then you know who you're talking to, and then you can develop your advertising to them or your message. And that's fun too, because that's a challenge. And all this stuff is learnable. I'm going to be Mr. Rogers here. Don't say I can't. Okay, there's no I can't. You have access to the entirety of human civilization's knowledge in your pocket. You can learn anything you want to learn. And now you have the AIs that'll walk you through most anything. And which is good and bad. But yeah, you can learn this stuff, and you can learn who your audience is. That's your unique selling position is going to be targeted towards a specific group of people. Okay, like what are we doing? We're doing eggs. So we sell for people at home. Our thing is jumbo coturnix, wild or farrow quail. And that's all we raise quail-wise. We don't bob white, we don't do the whites, we don't do exotic colors, we don't do any of that. Why? Because our target is very specific. It's people who want a food program, who want to raise eggs, who want to have meat, who are doing self-sufficiency. This way I can focus solely on that. I don't have to waste my time telling people about how cool our colors are, because I'm not doing that. I'm a very specific target market. And then my advertising is to them, like here's how to make food. Here's a food animal. Here's what you can do at home. By the way, come look at our goofy videos on YouTube to learn, so you stop calling us and asking the same questions. Like you were saying earlier. And then we developed other products. We have a feed. Angela, we developed a chicken feed, which we did a ton of, like, it's a lot of self-teaching. I had to learn about, the food chemistry, the biology, the molecular biology of the chickens, their physiology, their anatomy, their digestion, learn about the feed. It's a lot of information, but like she said, I'm like a little 5-year-old. I like learning. I like seeing stuff. I'm always like, why? It's fun for me. Some people not so much. So find out what you like. Anyway, that's our defined market. These quail people who want food. So now we know who we're selling to. Am I talking too damn much? I ramble a lot. Does that make all sense?
Yes.
Is that making sense? So your market is the people you're talking to or communicating to, the people you've defined who appeal to your product, and your advertising is the message that you send to them. That's the letter you give to them to tell about your product. Your advertising, your video, your whatever. First you got to know who you're talking to. You wouldn't write the same letter to a boss as you would a coworker, sort of thing. It's two different messages.
Yeah.
Yo, you coming out for beers Friday? As opposed to, sir, I generally request an early departure from work, seeing that I've got same goal being reached, just two different people.
I lost my train of thought.
Well, I think that's about like, oh, crap.
I was like,
Here.
I literally had some and I lost it.
That's all right. We can go on and close out because it's getting onto the
Yeah, I was
1
like,
hour mark. It's been a while.
yeah. Okay.
Anything you'd like to add, hon? Lessons for homesteaders and entrepreneurs. This is important. Authenticity wins, like we discussed at the beginning.
Mhm.
Being yourself.
Mhm.
You're yourself.
Mhm.
Angela's not fake. You know, like we're real. So be authentic. Because people, one thing we hate is when somebody's BSing and they're fake, and you have no respect for it and you reject it.
And even if it's like maybe it's not terribly obvious, but we're instinctive. You know, humans are instinctive, and you might feel something off, and then you don't trust them. You know,
You
and you
can
want
feel
to
that
make
too if they're in it for money. That
Mhm.
is almost always people can tell.
Yeah,
And then people just aren't interested.
yeah,
But if
and
you're willing to share your passion with someone, that's free knowledge. You don't get anything out of that except satisfaction of helping someone else. And people can feel that and then they trust
yeah,
you.
they do trust you, and then they'll tell their friends and family about you. Yeah, it makes a big difference. So
Yeah, absolutely. My motivation is to be outside and spend time with my pig, my little pet pig. So I don't really have need for wealth and
I
etc.
think too, along those lines, for people that are like working on developing their brand, I think there's a lot to be said about having a local market because there's lots
Mhm.
of people that are successful online and like ship and stuff.
Mhm.
But I think if you don't have like a local customer base, I don't know. I feel like there's something to be said about that. Like you need your local support base. Like
Oh,
I'm
for
not
sure.
that big online, but my locals, like they know who I am and they trust me. And so I think like some of the bigger names, like they do have a local customer base too. And I think there's something to be said about that, showing how authentic they are in person as well, because they have those local people that actually physically interact with them and see that.
Mhm.
Right.
And that's a total
That's
another
true.
yeah, that's another market too. Your
Mm-hmm.
local hyper local market.
They see that you're a real person. They can,
Mm-hmm.
if you're meeting with that person, then they know that you're authentic. They can feel your vibes. They know what they're getting from you, the quality of the items you're selling. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, right. Okay, authenticity, innovative marketing. Don't be afraid to try new things. Don't be afraid to do the unconventional. Not everybody's goat soap needs to be earth organic, hippie goat soap. It can be Dr. Squatch goat soap and be very successful
Mm-hmm.
with a little unorthodox marketing. And finally, this is important. I said this at the beginning, being consistent. You don't need to be the best. You need to be consistent if you
Yeah.
want to see progression. And in your consistency, the more consistency you have, the more opportunity you will see to where your weaknesses lie, because you'll have failures. You're like, oh, I've been doing this and doing this. It's not working. That's not working. So we can modify.
Mm-hmm.
The more trust you develop too, because people see you're in it for the long haul and you're not necessarily in it for like a quick buck, because those people
Right.
come and go. But like when you're doing it
Yeah.
for yourself and because you're passionate about it, they'll see that consistency and develop that trust.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is
Yeah.
this is a subsystem of the thing I enjoy or am passionate about. This is just like, it could be anything. It happens to be quail. My thing is, like I talk about here, and I often talk about in our videos, is betterment of self, improvement of self,
Mm-hmm.
and teaching.
Yeah.
To give freely to the other humans so the other humans can live better and well. This is just the vehicle I'm using currently, right? I teach you, oh, here's how you grow eggs, here's how you do this, whatever. But the whole foundation in the philosophy is you don't stagnate, you're not incapable, and you have never tapped your complete potential. Not that you have to be 100%, but people have great potential and they sell themselves very short, or they convinced they don't have that potential. They don't really strive to get it, and they kind of stay at a safe space and they have fear for going higher. But I try to encourage people, you're a human being. You're not an ant. You're not a mollusk. You have this wonderful giant brain that can be abstract in thought, and it can approach and develop many things. go out and try. And as many people will tell you you can't, there's people who are rooting for you
Mhm.
and praying for you and know you can.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Now, it's a true story.
Yeah.
So that's really the thing behind, like, oh yeah, I sell quail egg, but I like the human, and I think the human has more potential than they let themselves achieve because of all these goofy external things telling them they can. Does that make sense?
Hey,
You hear me?
yes. Do you guys have anything else you want to add? I think
No.
we kind of covered a lot. I think people will get good notes on this, on how to figure out what their niche is. I know a lot of people that really struggle with that, so I'm glad that we covered this topic.
Yeah, if anybody has questions for me or us, send them over to us. You know, we don't have a big channel. We just need 1,000 people, 1,000 subs. But we don't have a big channel. We do a hyper local market. If somebody's curious about something, as long as you're not hounding me 24 hours a day, you know.
And I'll
write
put your guys' link too in the
Yeah,
description
somebody-
so they can
How's
find
it-
you easier.
Yeah, somebody has a question about something, they can ask me. I like teaching. So I think
Okay,
that was a
so
fabulous talk.
all right, so to conclude, figure out your niche. Write down stuff about you, what makes you unique. What was the other one? Developing, I don't remember what number 2
Your
was.
goals. Figure
Oh,
out what
right,
your-
yes,
what
write
your
down your
vision and your
goals.
Mhm.
And remember, the last one, your objective isn't the only thing you're achieving while you're going to get your objective. There's a path to your objective. And while you're on that path, you're learning and developing.
And yeah, be yourself. That's the only way to be. It just makes it so
Mhm.
much easier. Everybody's
Yeah,
adults that's watching this, so be yourself. Your vibe will attract your tribe. And if you are struggling to figure out what's unique about you, ask a friend, and someone can totally help you. Be like, oh, I like this about you, or I like this about you, and that'll kind of help generate ideas as well.
Mhm.
So yeah, thank you guys for watching. Thank you, Angela and Christopher. For being on.
Yeah, thanks,
you.
Kelly. Thanks for having us on there.
Yeah.